it sounds good to say, yeah, all the cases that, existed prior to COVID, we're going to get our judgment, or if you already have a judgment, we're going to get our lockout. But there's a lot more going on, and it's not going to happen as fast as people are hoping, including myself.
And you mentioned earlier, anyone who's been to the eviction courts, just prior to COVID, over the course of the last couple of years, honestly, the judges are highly in favor of the tenants.
Yes.
I've been fortunate that in my 10 years of being a landlord, and again, it's not like I own hundreds of units, but I've actually only ever had to show up to eviction court one time in 10 years. It was downtown LA, and the judge starts out by giving us landlords a 15-minute lecture about why we should have a workout with the tenants, because potentially we could lose our properties, go into foreclosure. He was speaking at us, the landlords, right, not the tenants who had not paid the rent. So that was the environment prior to the pandemic. You can only imagine the bleeding hearts that are going to be at the courthouses now when everyone's crying that they had an issue with the pandemic. And while some did, obviously, there's a number of others that are playing the game. I'm selling a building in Los Angeles right now. A couple works for Target. They're working because Target is booming given everything in the economy right now. And they haven't paid, claiming issues with COVID. So,
the funny thing is about the judge that takes 15 minutes to explain this, while he's talking to the landlords, he's doing it right in front of the tenants. Mm-hmm. He's telling the tenants all of the arguments to make out in the hallway, he or she. So yes, and I agree with you 100%. I will say that in Los Angeles County, there are still a handful of good judges that really implement the law the way it's supposed to be implemented. But you have to understand that Los Angeles itself, and I'll make the connection in a second because it may sound like I'm being a racist when I say this, and I don't mean it in any racist tone at all. But Los Angeles has come out itself and declared itself a sanctuary city. And that only gives you an idea of the mindset of the city itself. And the courts walk hand in hand with the leaders of the city. So while they aren't told by the mayor, hey, this is how you're going to play this, the politics of the city of Los Angeles and Los Angeles County certainly play into it. And it is a very tenant-friendly environment. And they do look for every possible way to protect the tenants at every step of the game. I'll give you an example of something you just mentioned, how tenants who can pay their rent are playing the game. I have a client who called me 2 days ago, and she said, hey, Mike, I've got this townhome, and the tenant's been paying rent up until the HOA had to do some work in a totally different unit that I don't own. And because of the jackhammers, the tenant is calling me complaining, saying she doesn't want to pay rent. And so I told her, this is what you say to the tenant. Hey, the HOA is in control of that. It's got nothing to do with me. It's not my unit. I have no control over this. You need to pay your rent. And then she called me back after she told the tenant that. And the tenant said, hey, look, I don't care. I don't want to pay my rent because of the jackhammer. So I'm letting you know that I'm being negatively impacted by COVID, and that I'm only going to pay you 25%. Now, this just happened 2 days ago, and she's paid her rent all the way up until 2 days ago. And until 2 days ago, she's never raised COVID once. So it just shows you how informed the public is about all these COVID protections and how that can be played even when the tenant has not been impacted by COVID at all. And then when you get to the court system and the court has institutionalized the protections for these tenants, how hard this is going to be for the landlords to actually work their way through this system right now. It's a nightmare. There's no other way to say it.
And my understanding is under this new law, they've also extended the unlawful detainer shielding. So essentially tenants that are brought under an unlawful detainer here recently, for landlords down the road, we're not going to see that when we pull their credit. We won't have any idea that they were one of these individuals who didn't pay during these times.
Well, the way the law is written, it says for that protected period, no tenant can be found guilty of unlawful detainer, which, like I said, they basically converted that debt into consumer debt. So you're right that in that sense, for that 5-month period, they've extended that shield. But I will say that that shield changed. It used to be that all litigation that's filed is public record unless it was sealed. Then in late 2017, that law changed so that all evictions are filed. I'm sorry, all evictions are sealed unless the landlord gets a judgment. Now, we all know, anybody who does evictions, whether you're an attorney or a landlord, we all know that the vast majority of these cases settle. They never get to trial. And the way they settle now, especially if there's an attorney involved on the other side, whether it's the court suggesting this to the tenant out in open in the courtroom, or the tenant has an attorney who says, we're not settling this case unless you seal the record. So the vast majority of eviction records are sealed right from day one, and they're sealed anyway. So I don't view that as anything that's of significant importance to the landlord. To me, what the landlords care about right now is one of two things. Either let's get the unit cash flowing again, or let's get that unit back so we can put it in the hands of somebody who can demonstrate that they have the ability to pay. And speaking of that, obviously now the due diligence on the part of the landlord when you're doing your screening for vacancies right now, it should include sources, let me rephrase that. It should include asking for proof of the income, especially for the tenants who are high income individuals, or in other words, they're making more than 100 grand. You want to get that, evidence of that in your due diligence now before you put them into the unit, so you can use that later if you have to.
Yeah, and in all these years of selling multifamily properties, you'd be surprised how little information a lot of landlords get on prospective tenants. Whereas for us, we always require 2 most recent pay stubs, credit report, and so on and so forth. Many of these landlords don't have a great tenant file, and now it will hurt them, given all the new regulations. Couple last questions for you. Does this affect commercial properties?
Not at all. It's all residential.
So let's say I have a commercial tenant that didn't pay me during COVID or doesn't pay me in October. Is it open season for evictions on commercial tenants?
It is. Yeah, we're going back to that. And it's interesting you would bring that up, and I'm glad you did, because a lot of your clients own commercial, and it's really the commercial tenants that have not been paying the rent. Mm-hmm. And so what I've been suggesting to my clients is, one, find out again, what does your local moratorium say? Again, LA, their moratorium applies to commercial tenants as well. But this law particularly applies to residential only. And so I've suggested to them that if you end up in court, you always want to look like the good guy. And you want to look like you gave them every opportunity and you were very reasonable in your attempts to resolve the situation. So what I'm telling my clients right now is check your local ordinance. If your ordinance goes through September 30th, like most of them do, open the dialogue right now and reach out to them, whether it's through my office writing a letter to them, telling them, hey, as soon as this moratorium's up, you're back on the hook, and we can either work out a deal now, a settlement agreement, or in 3 weeks, I'm going to be serving you a 3-day pay or quit for the whole thing. And we're going to be evicting you based on that. So which would you rather do? Hopefully the commercial tenants, the ones who have not really been decimated by COVID, hopefully they're smart enough to get back in line. And the ones who have been decimated by COVID, hopefully they're smart enough to say, hey, look, let's negotiate something. Even if it's me buying out of my lease and just getting out of this situation, let's work this out. I hope that's the way it goes.
And last question for you, for those of us that have been fortunate enough to, collect all of our rents, tenants have been behaving and so forth, we're in a good position. We haven't raised rents because, we've been mindful of the situation. Maybe we thought it would be out of bad taste if we issued rent increases, but now things are returning a little bit more to normal. Is it lawful and legal to issue rent increases for multifamily at this point, or residential in general?
It depends, again, on your local jurisdiction. And I keep saying this, I said it in our last interview as well. I'm not trying to be vague, but I don't want to say something on your show that a landlord misinterprets or goes out and does something and then comes back to you or me and says, hey, you told me this. look at your local ordinance. For example, LA's got a moratorium on increases. LA City has a moratorium on increases for 12 months past an expiration of the state of emergency or whatever that is. And there's a real gray zone right now because, like I said, the executive order signed by Newsom that gives the municipalities the authorization to create those moratoriums, that expires September 30th. Unless he extends it, which I don't think he will. Unless he extends that, the question becomes, do the moratoriums automatically expire at that time? And this law specifically addresses the moratoriums. And in fact, one of the last parts of this law specifically states that they're addressing the moratoriums with the intention that the landlords be able to calculate the date by which they can increase rents as quickly as possible. So in that sense, it seems to imply that as soon as these moratoriums expire, which again, my position is they expire when Newsom's executive order giving them authority to exist expires, which is September 30th. So as soon as they expire, to me, it seems like you now have the right to implement those rent increases. But again, we're in uncharted territory. There's no case law to back any of this up. I'm just taking what I consider to be a common sense reading of the statute and the intent that they specifically put into it.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you. You've been more than gracious with your time. I know that you, like many of the eviction attorneys, are inundated with cases and so forth. And the minute I started texting you and saying, hey, we need to help our viewers, let's dissect this new law. You were even in the middle of planning this hiking trip with your son. You still were nice enough to come on our show. So I thank you. Where can, obviously a lot of our viewers are going to need your help, need some input, need some assistance. Where can they contact you? Your email, phone number, how do we contact you?
All right, so I'll give you the main number for the office. That's area code 626-294-0500. It's the main number, 626-294-0500. You can also go to our website at www.mbrennanlaw.com, mbrennanlaw.com. So that's M like Michael, BRENNANLAW.com. I want to say to your clients out there, because admittedly, after we had the interview before, many of them reached out to me, and I really appreciate that. I'm happy to help your clients. Like you just brought up, though, I am going out of town. My son and I are about to hike Mount Whitney, so I'll be out of town for about a week. And on top of that, I am inundated. Right now, there's actually at least 8 new documents under this new law that need to be drafted. I'm in the middle of drafting them, and I do have a lot of clients. I'm on the phone. I live on the phone as you do. So please be patient with me calling you back. I promise you, I will get back in touch with you, whether it's through email or a telephone call. Just have a little patience right now. We're all trying to figure this stuff out, and we're all trying to get through this stuff. And while it looks like, on its face, it looks like, hey, everything's starting to move forward, I need to jump on it. In fact, like I said, the courts aren't even issuing the summonses, even though they can. They're not doing it yet. So we all have to have a little bit of patience. We're getting there. Things are starting to loosen up. But, when you call, just give me a little bit of time. I will get back in touch with anybody.
Sure. I think that's more than fair. Well, thank you again, sir. You and your son and your friends there on the trip, have fun. Be safe.
Thank you very much, Kris. I will talk to you later.
I hope you found today's show informative. I take it upon myself, Phil, as a broker who sells multifamily properties, who represents landlords every day. It's my responsibility to work with you shoulder and shoulder and to bring this information to you that will help you in the day-to-day management of your properties. Please give our video a like. Be sure to share our video. There's many landlords who need this information more than ever. And as we discovered, you don't want to try to navigate this new law by yourself. And also subscribe to our channel. We will continue to go out in the marketplace and not only interview those individuals that can bring you information, but give you teaching tips along the way, everything from fix and flips in the multifamily industry, speaking to whatever's pertinent given the times and that's impacting multifamily ownership. Kris German from The Apartment Dealer, wishing you positive cash flow, tenants who behave, and much protection from Uncle Sam. Till next time.